The arrival of the morning sky above New York turned black at exactly 9:47 a.m. Admiral Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Death's Edge, watching Earth grow larger in the viewing screen. The blue and green planet looked so peaceful, so innocent. He had seen hundreds of worlds like this one. Soon, it would be nothing but ash and glass. "Sir, we are in position," reported Commander Nex from the weapons station. "All ships ready for orbital bombardment." Vex nodded, his scaled hands gripping the command chair. The Draconian Empire had conquered 47 star systems using the same simple method. Arrive, demand surrender, destroy everything if refused. These mammals would be no different. "Open a channel to the planet," Vex ordered. "On Earth, President." Kane sat in the White House Situation Room, staring at the massive alien ships on every screen. Each vessel was the size of Manhattan, casting shadows across entire continents. 12 ships in total, arranged in a perfect circle around the planet. The alien's voice filled the room through the speakers. It was cold, mechanical, translated by computers that had learned human language in minutes. "Primitive mammals of the third planet. I am Admiral Vex of the Draconian Empire. You have 24 of your hours to surrender completely. Lay down all weapons. Prepare your population for relocation to work camps. Refuse, and your world burns." The transmission ended, leaving silence in the Situation Room. "Options?" Kane asked his advisors. General Ross, a gray-haired man who had served in 3 wars, stood slowly. "Sir, I need to make a call. There are contingencies in place for this situation." Kane frowned. "What contingencies?" "Our space program barely reaches Mars. Not those contingencies, sir. Much older ones." 2 hours later, Ross led Kane down an elevator that shouldn't exist. They descended for 10 minutes, going deeper than any building should go. The elevator finally stopped, opening into a vast underground chamber filled with technology that looked nothing like human design. "General, what is this place?" Ross walked to a console covered in symbols that seemed to shift and move on there. This is Control Station Alpha, Mr. President. It's been here for 8,000 years waiting. That's impossible. 8,000 years ago, humans were barely farming." Ross pressed his hand against a panel. The symbols glowed bright blue, and the entire chamber hummed to life. "The humans on the surface were barely farming, sir. But we weren't always surface dwellers." Screens flickered on all around them, showing views of space, alien ships, and strange energy readings. Kane stared in shock as the displays showed him things that couldn't be real. "Sir, humanity didn't evolve on Earth. We came here as refugees, fleeing something terrible. Our ancestors built these defenses and then went into hiding. They became farmers, hunters, simple people, but they never forgot what they were running from." On the screens, the Draconian ships moved into attack formation. "And now it's found us again," Ross said quietly. 20-2 hours after the ultimatum, Admiral Vex gave the order. "All ships begin planetary bombardment. Turn their cities to glass." The most powerful weapons in the Draconian fleet fired at once. Energy beams that could crack continents lanced down toward Earth's surface. They stopped 3 miles above the planet. Vex stared in disbelief as his weapons simply disappeared, their energy absorbed by something invisible in Earth's atmosphere. "Sir, our weapons are having no effect," reported Commander Nex, his voice shaking. "Impossible. Scan the planet again. Find their defense grid." "Sir, there is no defense grid. The energy is coming from ... everywhere. The entire planet is protected by something we don't understand. Deep beneath the Earth, in chambers hidden under every major city, ancient machines older than recorded history began to wake up. They had been sleeping for thousands of years, waiting for this moment. On the surface, people around the world felt it. A vibration in their bones, a whisper in their minds. Memories that weren't their own began to surface. Knowledge they had, never learned, flooded their consciousness. In the Colorado bunker, President Kane watched as energy readings climbed beyond anything their instruments could measure. "General, what's happening?" Ross smiled grimly. "Humanity is remembering who we really are." The first energy beam erupted from somewhere beneath the Pacific Ocean. It was not a laser, not plasma, not any weapon the Draconians had ever seen. It was pure destruction, focused and controlled, rising from Earth's surface like the finger of an angry god. Admiral Vex had just enough time to scream before the beam cut his flagship in half. 11 more beams followed, each one emerging from a different part of Earth. They moved with impossible precision, tracking the Draconian ships as they tried desperately to escape. In 30 seconds, half the invasion fleet was destroyed. The remaining ships fled in panic, their crews screaming prayers to gods they had forgotten in their arrogance. But as they ran, deep space sensors detected something that made their terror complete. Ships were rising from Earth's surface. Not the crude rockets they had expected, but sleek vessels that moved like living things, their hulls gleaming with the same energy that had destroyed the fleet. Admiral Vex, barely alive in his ruined command center, watched in horror as Earth revealed its true nature. This wasn't a primitive world at all. It was a fortress. And humanity was no longer hiding. In his final moments of consciousness, Vex heard something that would haunt his dreams. A transmission from Earth, broadcast in a language that had been dead for 10,000 years. Old Galactic, the tongue of the empire that once ruled the stars. The message was simple: the Terrans have awakened. Let the galaxy tremble. As his ship tumbled through space, Admiral Vex finally understood why his people's oldest records spoke of humans with such fear. They had found the sleepers, and the sleepers were no longer sleeping. The first strike admiral. Vex floated in his damaged command chair, green blood dripping from cuts across his scaled face. Half his fleet was gone, destroyed by a species that should barely understand fire. "Status report," he croaked to his surviving crew. Commander Nex worked frantically at a broken console. "Sir, we have 6 ships remaining, all heavily damaged. The humans, their weapons cut through our shields like they weren't there." Vex stared at the tactical display. Earth sat in the center, peaceful and blue, surrounded by the wreckage of Draconian warships. It made no sense. His scouts had watched this planet for months. Primitive mammals with crude rockets and metal flying machines. How could they possess weapons that made the Empire's finest technology look like toys? "Run deep scans of the planet," Vex ordered. "Find their weapon systems." The scanner operator's claws clicked nervously on his controls. "Sir, the readings are impossible. Energy signatures are coming from underground installations beneath every major city. But according to our geology scans, some of these structures predate the current civilization by thousands of years." "That's impossible. These mammals have only had technology for a few hundred years." "Sir, there's more. We're detecting massive power sources deep in the planet's core. Not fusion, not antimatter. Something else entirely. The energy levels are off our scales." Before Vex could respond, space around Earth began to change. The blackness between the stars shimmered like water, and shapes began to emerge. Ships rose from the planet's surface. But these weren't the crude metal tubes the Draconians had expected. These vessels moved like living things, their hulls flowing and changing shape as they climbed toward the stars. They were beautiful and terrifying, covered in the same blue. Energy that had destroyed the fleet. In the Colorado bunker, President Kane watched in amazement as humanity's true fleet revealed itself. "General Ross, how many ships do we have?" Ross studied the displays with calm eyes. 12 battle groups, sir, each with 50 ships. We've been building them for 3,000 years, hidden in facilities around the world. 3,000 years? That's longer than recorded history. Recorded surface history, Mr. President. Our true history goes much deeper. Ross touched another panel, and a new screen appeared. It showed star charts, but not from any human astronomy book Kane had ever seen. These maps showed the galaxy as it was thousands of years ago, with trade routes, colonies, and empire boundaries marked in languages that looked almost familiar. Humanity once ruled half the galaxy, sir. We called ourselves the Terran Empire. We had colonies on 1,000 worlds, trade agreements with dozens of species. We were explorers, scientists, protectors of the weak. What happened? Ross's face darkened. Something came from the deep void between galaxies. Something that turned our own colonies against us, that corrupted entire species into mindless servants. We called it the hunger. Our ancestors fought it for 100 years before they realized the truth, which was, it couldn't be defeated by force alone. So our leaders made the hardest choice in human history. They evacuated everyone they could to hidden worlds like Earth, wiped all records of our civilization, and went into hiding. They became farmers and hunters, living simple lives while our automated systems watched the galaxy and waited. On the tactical display, the human fleet began moving toward the surviving Draconian ships. They didn't attack immediately. Instead, they surrounded the alien vessels like wolves circling wounded prey. Admiral Vex received a transmission on his emergency channel. The voice that spoke was calm, professional, and utterly terrifying in its confidence. Draconian fleet, this is Captain Blake of the Terran ship Morning Star. You will surrender immediately, or be destroyed. Vex activated his communicator with a trembling claw. Human vessel, you don't understand what you're dealing with. The Draconian Empire spans 47 systems. Our fleet will come for you. Captain Blake's response chilled him to his core. Admiral, we've been monitoring your empire for 2 centuries. We know exactly what you are. Pirates and slavers who prey on the weak. Your reign of terror ends now. Impossible. You're a primitive species. We studied you for months. You studied the people we wanted you to see. Farmers, workers, ordinary citizens living peaceful lives. You never saw us. The Watchers. The ones who remember. Vex tried to contact his home system, but his communications were being jammed by technology he couldn't understand. Your Emperor will never know what happened here unless you deliver our message personally, Blake continued. Return to your capital. Tell Emperor Krex that the Terran Empire has returned. Tell him to release every slave, evacuate every occupied world, and withdraw to your home system. He has 30 of your days to comply. And if he refuses, then your species will learn why the galaxy once trembled at the sound of our name. Around Earth, more ships continued to rise. Battle stations that had hidden in asteroid belts for millennia came online. Ancient orbital platforms powered up, their weapons trained on the empty space where jump gates would appear in the bunker. President Kane felt a strange sensation. Memories that weren't his own filled his mind. He could see maps, remember the taste of alien foods, recall conversations in languages he had never learned. General, what's happening to me? The awakening, sir. It's in our genetic code, locked away until we needed it. Every human on Earth is experiencing it now. They're remembering who we really are. Across the planet, similar scenes played out. A farmer in Kansas suddenly knew how to pilot a starship. A teacher in Japan found herself speaking perfect galactic standard. A child in Brazil drew pictures of worlds she had never seen, but somehow remembered. Humanity was remembering its true heritage. Admiral Vex made his choice. With his remaining ships, He limped toward the edge of the system, carrying the human message back to Emperor Krex. Behind him, Earth's fleet began to move. Their first target, the mining world of Kepler 442b, where 10,000 alien slaves worked. In draconian labor camps, the liberation of the galaxy had begun. As Vex's ship jumped to hyperspace, he intercepted one final transmission from Earth. It was broadcast on all frequencies, in every known language. This is Earth, Sol System, Terran Empire. To all species held in bondage, to all peoples living in fear, we have returned. Help is coming. Hold on just a little longer. The message ended, but Vex knew it would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Hope, he realized, was the most dangerous weapon of all. And humanity had just given it to everyone. Asterisk. The hunter becomes hunted. Admiral Vex's damaged ship limped through hyperspace, its engines barely holding together. He stared at the star charts, trying to make sense of what he had witnessed. The primitive mammals of Earth had destroyed half his fleet in seconds. It defied everything he knew about the galaxy. "Sir?" Commander Nex called from his station. "I've been analyzing the human weapon signatures. They match something in our historical databases." "What are you talking about?" Nex's claws trembled as he brought up the data. "The energy patterns, sir. They're identical to weapons used by the Terran Empire." "But that's impossible. The Terrans vanished 10,000 years ago." Vex felt ice form in his stomach. Every draconian child learned about the Terrans in school, the ancient empire that once ruled the galaxy. The story said they had technology that could move stars, weapons that could crack planets, ships that traveled between dimensions. But those were just stories, myths. The Terrans were extinct. "Run the comparison again," Vex ordered. Before Nex could respond, alarms screamed throughout the ship. The hyperspace tunnel around them began to collapse. "Sir, we're being pulled back to normal space." The ship tumbled out of hyperspace into empty void. But it wasn't empty. Sleek human vessels surrounded them, their hulls gleaming with blue energy. They had somehow tracked a ship through hyperspace itself. A transmission came through on the main screen. A human woman appeared, her uniform bearing symbols that made Vex's blood freeze. "The Golden Eagle of the Terran Empire." "Admiral Vex," the woman said calmly. "I am Captain Blake of the Terran Defense Force. You're not going anywhere." "Impossible," Vex whispered. "The Terrans are extinct." Blake smiled coldly. "Is that what you tell yourselves? That the people you've been oppressing and enslaving across the galaxy are just animals? That the great Terran Empire simply vanished?" She leaned forward, and when she spoke, it was in perfect draconian. Not the broken pidgin that slaves learned, but the high court dialect that only nobles knew. "We never left, Admiral. We've been watching you for centuries, studying you, deciding when to act." Vex's ship shuddered as tractor beams locked onto it. The human vessels began pulling it toward a massive ship that dwarfed even the largest draconian dreadnought. "You're making a terrible mistake," Vex said. "The Draconian Empire controls 47 systems. We have millions of ships. You cannot fight us all." Blake's expression didn't change. "Admiral, your empire controls 47 systems because we allowed it to. We've been testing you, watching how you treat other species. You've failed that test." The draconian ship was drawn into a docking bay larger than most space stations. Vex found himself transported to what could only be described as a throne room, though it looked nothing like draconian architecture. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal, pulsing with soft light. Captain Blake stood waiting for him, no longer alone. Behind her stood representatives of dozens of alien species. Vex recognized many of them, supposed primitive peoples that the Draconian Empire had dismissed as unimportant. "Welcome to the real galaxy, Admiral," Blake said. "The one you never bothered to see. A tall being with feathered wings stepped forward. Vex recognized the species, the Avis. His people had conquered their homeworld 50 years ago, or so they thought. The Avis were never conquered, the being said in perfect galactic standard. We allowed your people to occupy some of our outer colonies while we evacuated our population to hidden worlds. The Terrans taught us this strategy long ago. A crystalline entity that seemed to be made of living diamonds spoke next. The Crystal Collective has been feeding false mineral surveys to your mining operations for decades. Every rich asteroid you've claimed has been carefully selected to keep you busy while we prepared. Blake gestured to the assembled beings. Every species you think you've conquered, every world you believe you control, every slave race you've created, they've all been in contact with us, waiting for the right moment. Vex felt his world crumbling around him. What do you want? Simple, Blake replied. We want you to deliver a message to Emperor Krex. Tell him the Terran Empire has returned. Tell him he has 30 days to release every slave, evacuate every occupied world, and withdraw to the Draconian home system. He'll never agree to that. Our empire spans half the galaxy. Blake touched a control panel, and the room's walls became transparent. Vex gasped at what he saw outside. Ships. Thousands of them. Human vessels, but also ships from every species he thought the Draconians had conquered. They stretched as far as the eye could see, a fleet larger than anything in recorded history. Your empire spans 47 systems, Blake said quietly. Our alliance spans 400. We've been building this coalition for centuries, waiting for the right moment to act. She turned back to him, and Vex saw something in her eyes that terrified him. Not anger, not hatred, but disappointment. Your people could have been part of this, Admiral. The galaxy is vast enough for everyone, but you chose conquest over cooperation, slavery over partnership, fear over friendship. Vex was escorted back to his ship, his mind reeling from what he had learned. As his vessel was released from the tractor beam, he received one final transmission. Admiral, Blake's voice filled his bridge. When you deliver our message to Emperor Krex, make sure you tell him one more thing. What? The humans he's been hunting across the galaxy, the ones his forces capture as slaves, the ones who escape from his prison worlds, the ones who vanish in the night. They weren't running from us. Blake paused, and Vex could hear the smile in her voice. They were running to us. As Vex's ship began its journey back to Draconian space, he monitored the communication channels. Already, word was spreading across the galaxy. On every world under Draconian control, the message was the same. The Terrans have returned. Liberation is coming. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, Draconian guards watched nervously as their alien slaves began to sing. Old songs and forgotten languages. Songs of hope. In the capital system of the Draconian Empire, Emperor Krex received emergency reports from across his domain. Slave rebellions were breaking out everywhere. Ships were disappearing. Entire colonies were going silent. Asterisk. And in the deep void between stars, the largest fleet in galactic history began to move. Not toward the Draconian capital, but toward the nearest slave world. The liberation had begun. Admiral Vex, battered and broken, carried the message that would change the galaxy forever. Behind him, he left a coalition of species united not by conquest, but by the simple belief that all beings deserved to be free. The hunter had become the hunted. And the prey was no longer running. Asterisk the liberation. War Emperor Krex sat on his throne of black metal, surrounded by the skulls of species his empire had conquered. The throne room on the Draconian capital world had been built to intimidate, with massive pillars carved from the bones of extinct creatures. Today, it felt more like a tomb. Report, Krex commanded, his voice echoing off the dark walls. General, Torque stepped forward, his scales pale with fear. My Emperor, we have lost contact with 17 colonies in the past week. Before the communications went dark, we received reports of massive slave uprisings. Crush them. Send the Fourth Fleet. Sir, the Fourth Fleet is gone. Admiral Rex took them to investigate the Kepler system. We haven't heard from them since. Krex's claws scraped against his throne. What about Admiral Vex's report? This nonsense about humans? Sir, our scientists have confirmed it. The weapon signatures match Terran Empire technology. The humans of Earth are the descendants of our ancestors' greatest enemy. Before Krex could respond, alarms began wailing throughout the palace. A aide rushed in, his breathing panicked. My Emperor, there's a transmission coming in on all frequencies. It's from the slaves on Kepler 442b. Impossible. We control all communications on that world. The aide activated the main display. The image that appeared made every Draconian in the room step backward in shock. God, it wasn't a human speaking. It was a being from the depth species. Aquatic aliens that the Draconians had enslaved for their underwater mining abilities. But this one wasn't wearing chains. He stood proud, wearing the blue and gold uniform of the Terran Defense Force. People of the galaxy, the depth being said. In perfect galactic standard. I am Commander Reef of the Terran Liberation Fleet. What you are about to see is the liberation of Kepler 442b. The camera pulled back, showing the mining world from orbit. Draconian defense stations surrounded the planet like a metal web. But, even as they watched, sleek ships appeared from nowhere. Human vessels decloaking right next to the defense platforms. The battle was over in minutes. The Draconian stations simply stopped working. Their weapons powered down, their shields collapsed. Their crews abandoned ship in panic. The Terrans did not fire a single shot, Commander Reef continued. They simply asked us if we wanted to be free. The answer was yes. The display switched to the planet's surface. Draconian guards were laying down their weapons, surrounded by former slaves who now carried energy shields and advanced weapons. But there was no massacre, no revenge killings. Any Draconian who wishes to leave may do so safely, Reef announced. Any who wish to stay and help rebuild what they helped destroy are welcome. This is not conquest. This is liberation. Emperor Krex roared in fury, his voice shaking the throne room. Send every ship we have. Destroy that world. Kill them all. General. Torx bowed his head. Sir, we've tried. Our fleets cannot reach Kepler 442b. Human ships are intercepting them before they can jump to hyperspace. And sir, there's more. Another display activated, showing tactical reports from across the Empire. Red symbols marked lost worlds. Yellow showed rebellions in progress. Green indicated worlds still under Draconian control. There was far too much red. 18 systems have declared independence, Torx reported. 43 more are in open revolt. Our remaining loyal systems are requesting massive reinforcements to maintain control. How many ships do we have left? 2,000, my Emperor. But the humans? Intelligence suggests they have over 10,000 vessels. And that's just their main fleet. Krex slammed his fist against his throne. Impossible. No single species could build such a force. Sir, they're not a single species anymore. Our reports show ships from 74 different races in their fleet. Every species we've conquered, enslaved, or threatened has joined them. On the display, another world appeared, the industrial planet of Vega Prime. Draconian factories had operated there for decades, using slave labor from 6 different species. Now those same slaves stood in the factory courtyards, holding weapons and singing songs of freedom. But what shocked Krex most was who stood beside them. Draconians, his own people, removing their imperial uniforms, and joining the rebellion. Commander. Torx, one of the Draconian rebels, said to the camera, "Tell Emperor Krex that not all of us forgot what honor means. Some of us remember when our people were explorers, not conquerors." The transmission ended, leaving the throne room in silence. Admiral Vex limped into the chamber, his body still bearing the wounds from his encounter with the humans. "My Emperor, I bring a message from Captain Blake of the Terran Defense Force." "Speak." "She says the offer still stands. Release all slaves, withdraw to our home system, and the killing stops. Refuse, and they will come for us." Krex laughed bitterly. "Let them come. We still control our core systems. We still have the death weapons our ancestors built. If these humans want war, we'll give them such a war that the galaxy will remember it for 10,000 years." But even as he spoke, reports continued to flood in. The human fleet wasn't attacking military targets. They were liberating worlds, one by one, offering freedom to any who wanted it, and safe passage to any who did not. It was working. The Draconian Empire, built on fear and oppression, was crumbling from within as hope spread faster than any weapon got in the deep void near the galactic core. Something stirred. Ancient sensors, dormant for millennia, detected the energy signatures of Terran ships. Massive shapes began to move in the darkness between stars, awakening from their long sleep. The Void Collective had slumbered since their last battle with humanity 10,000 years ago. But now the children of Terra had revealed themselves again, and the Collective was hungry. Captain Blake stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching as another world joined the liberation. But her instruments were picking up something troubling from the galactic core, energy readings that matched nothing in their databases. "Ma'am," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. General Ross wants to speak with you immediately." Blake's face went pale as she listened to the message. When it ended, she turned to her crew. "Send word to all ships. We need to accelerate the liberation timeline. Something's coming from the core, and we're going to need every ally we can get." The real war was about to begin, and this time, humanity wouldn't be running. The ancient enemy returns. The stars went out. Captain Blake stared at her tactical display in disbelief. Entire star systems on the galactic core side of space were simply vanishing from sensors, not destroyed, consumed, eaten by something that left nothing behind but empty void. "Report," she ordered her bridge crew. "Ma'am, we're detecting massive energy signatures moving toward inhabited space. The readings don't match anything in our databases. They single quotes read ... wrong somehow. Like they don't belong in our reality." Blake knew exactly what they were seeing. General Ross had briefed her on humanity's greatest shame and terror. The reason their ancestors had fled to the edge of the galaxy 10,000 years ago. "Send an emergency transmission to Emperor Krex," she ordered. "Tell him we need to talk." On the Draconian capital world, Emperor Krex sat in his crumbling throne room, watching his empire die world by world. When the human transmission arrived, he almost ignored it. But something in Captain Blake's voice made him listen. "Emperor Krex, this is Captain Blake of the Terran Defense Force. We need to meet immediately. The Void Collective is awakening." Krex's blood turned to ice. Every species in the galaxy had legends about the Void Collective, the darkness that consumed entire civilizations, the hunger that could never be filled. "You're lying," he transmitted back. "The Collective is a myth. Check your long-range sensors on the core side," Blake replied. "Count the stars that are no longer there." Krex did. The results made him sick. 17 star systems had gone dark in the past 6 hours. And the darkness was spreading toward inhabited space. 3 hours later, Krex found himself aboard a human ship for the first time in his life. The meeting room was simple, functional, nothing like the elaborate throne rooms he was used to. Captain. Blake sat across from him, along with representatives from dozens of other species. The Void Collective isn't just an ancient enemy, Blake explained. They're parasites from outside our galaxy. They consume entire civilizations, turning their technology and people into extensions of themselves. Admiral Vex, now wearing the blue uniform of the Terran Defense Force, spoke up. My Emperor, I've seen what they can do to our people. The humans have records, videos from the last war. We need to unite against them, or we all die. Krex watched in horror as the humans showed him footage from 10,000 years ago. Draconian ships, corrupted by void technology, turning their weapons on their own people. Entire planets consumed by black energy that transformed everything it touched into something alien and wrong. Why should I trust you? Krex asked. You're destroying my empire. Blake leaned forward. Because your empire was built on the same mistake our ancestors made. We thought conquest and control made us strong. The collective feeds on that kind of thinking. They turn it against us. She gestured to the assembled beings around the table. Former slaves, former enemies, all working together. This is how we beat them last time. Not through superior weapons or bigger fleets, but by choosing cooperation over domination. By refusing to let them turn us against each other. Krex stared at the tactical display showing the approaching void forces. Hundreds of ships that looked like they were built for nightmares. They moved wrong, bent space around them in ways that hurt to look at. What do you need from me? Everything, Blake said simply. Every ship, every soldier, every world that's still loyal to you. And something more important, we need you to tell your people why we're doing this. The combined fleet that assembled near Earth was the largest in galactic history. Human ships flew alongside draconian dreadnoughts. Former slaves worked side by side with their former masters. Species that had been enemies for centuries put aside their hatred to face the common threat. But even united, they were outnumbered. The Void Collective had spent 10,000 years consuming galaxies, growing stronger with each world they devoured. The first battle took place at the edge of the Sol system. The Collective's ships moved like living things, their hulls shifting and changing as they absorbed energy from human weapons. Sir, Blake's tactical officer reported, our weapons aren't working. They're adapting to everything we throw at them. Blake smiled grimly. That's because we're not using our real weapons. Yet, send the activation signal to Earth. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in chambers older than recorded history, the final defenses activated. Not weapons built by humanity's ancestors, but Earth itself. The planet's core had been modified thousands of years ago, turned into the ultimate weapon against the void. Energy erupted from Earth's surface, but not the blue beams that had destroyed the draconian fleet. This was something else entirely, pure creation energy, the opposite of the void's consuming darkness. The collective ships screamed as the energy hit them. For the first time in 10,000 years, they felt pain, but they adapted quickly, as they always did. More ships poured out of the void between galaxies, learning from each defeat. The battle raged for 3 days. Ships from both sides fell like stars, burning up in Earth's atmosphere. But slowly, inevitably, the collective began to win. That's when Admiral Vex made his choice. All draconian ships, follow my lead, he transmitted. Target the biggest collective vessel. We're going to ram it. Admiral, Emperor Krex's voice came over the comm. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do, Vex replied. My people have spent too long taking from the galaxy. Time we gave something back. 50 draconian ships, their hulls glowing with overloaded engines, threw themselves at the collective's command vessel. The explosion tore a hole in space itself, sending ripples across the star system. The sacrifice gave the human fleet they opening they needed. Earth's final weapon activated, not a device, but a message. Broadcast on frequencies that touched the quantum level of reality itself. It was simple. Choose. Across the galaxy, on every world the collective had touched, the corrupted beings they had created suddenly remembered who they used to be. And they chose to resist. The collective, for all their power, had made the same mistake they always made. They assumed that corruption and control were permanent. They never understood the one thing that made organic life different from their mechanical existence. Free will. The war ended not with explosions, but with silence. The collective ships simply stopped moving as their corrupted crews remembered their humanity, their honor, their love for the worlds they had lost. In the aftermath, as the galaxy began to rebuild, Captain Blake stood on Earth's surface with Emperor Krex. The former dictator was helping coordinate relief efforts for worlds damaged in the war. What happens now? Krex asked. Blake looked up at the stars, where ships from 100 different species were already working together to repair the damage. Now we do what we should have done 10,000 years ago. We build something better. Not an empire based on fear, but a community based on choice. Years later, children across the galaxy would learn about the day the stars almost went out forever. They would hear about the ships that fell like rain, the heroes who gave their lives for freedom, and the lesson that saved them all. That strength comes not from conquering others, but from helping them choose their own path. And in the deep void, between galaxies, the remnants of the collective drifted in silence, no longer hungry, no longer consuming. They had learned what their victims always knew, but they had forgotten. That, in the end, love was stronger than fear, hope was stronger than despair, and freedom was stronger than any chain. The galaxy was safe, and humanity had finally come. Home, *, end of Part 5, the end.